where we did this corner, and I say we've done it, but it's still not 100% perfect. But I think, having come back to it after some time, it's always worth doing a surface check just to discover where we are. So we'll have a look at that. So if I go into evaluate and I do a check mod, and we've got our tolerances in here, I'll put curvature on and we'll just see what happens. And I know that this is going to come up with a lot of things which look like errors. Some of them are errors, but there's other bits which aren't errors, so I'll explain. So we look at this, which looks rather disturbing, and but first of all, we've got this area here. So we're getting an error here. It's an angle mismatch, but that's because we actually have, although it goes all the way to the end, or more or less to the end, actually it's all continuous here. But we've got a condition down here where we haven't actually put a fillet in, so that's why we're getting that angle. And the other thing is, you'll notice it cuts off at 4 degrees, which I think I've explained this before, but it's to do with this tangent angle maximum, that when it gets to 4 degrees, it thinks that that must be a tangent break, so it just ignores anything down here. But this is all, we know this is a tangent break all the way down there, so we can ignore those ones. So it's a good idea just to go around and delete those, because we don't want to look at that. The same here, we've got just an angle break, and we know that that exists. We know that that's actually, it's not an error as such. I mean, this one is an error because I've got a gap there, 0.002, but it's so small that I'm just going to cover that with a fillet, so I don't need to worry about that one. And then there's a few things in here. So there's a fillet there which hasn't quite reached curvature alignment, and then we've got another sharp edge here, so let's get rid of that one just so we can clearly see what we're looking at. So there's that area to fix. There's also this corner, and one of those I know about. This one I'd forgotten about, to be honest, but there's a little spike on that end there, so let's see if we can fix that one. Now it's just right in the end. Really, if we looked at the highlights, if we look at these highlights going across here, there's nothing to see there, absolutely nothing, because it's just at one point. It's ridiculous, really. But if we wanted to get rid of it, then we can do what we did before, or which works to some extent. So first of all, I want to modify this one because it's the smallest one, and I want to put on some surface continuity checkers on here. So we just check that and that. And then if I go into object edit and we'll align, and I'll say G2 into here. Now this is going to break this, and we know that. And also it doesn't actually give us curvature, and that's the problem in that corner. It just won't do it as it stands. So the option there is to use tangent balance, which then moves the CVs along, and by a miracle it's done this edge here. Now the only thing about that is that it pushes the CVs this way, and it may break the ends. We've been lucky it hasn't done. So if I do tangent, if I go into, I'll put create history on, because then I can mess around with different options and open this up a bit, and put proxy display on so we can see where the CVs were. So the CVs were back here, and we've actually moved them quite a bit. The tangent ones, the first hull hasn't moved very much, which is quite surprising. But this one, the trouble is it's held that point, but it's moved every other point down here. But what we can do there is we can just try moving those back a bit. That would help, because now we've got these pushed together in the middle, which we don't really want. But tangent balance says, that's the absolute 100% accurate result. But if we go into and move the CVs, we can just adjust those a little bit. So it's these holes here. If I just pull those back a bit, a little bit less sensitivity. Of course, it won't move, will it? Because I've got history on, so I need to delete the history and then do that again. So well, hopefully we can pull these back a bit. That one looks a bit out as well. I'm just sliding them along those tangent lines, So it's not actually changing the curvature on the right hand side. You can see something's going on in the curvature because there's a little dot there that seems to be moving up and down, but we might be able to just adjust those a little bit until they look a bit better. This one on the end, probably if I adjust that, that's probably going to break the bottom edge, but maybe not, because that one it's the spacing I'm looking at between these ones and the adjacent, you know, that point and that point. I just want that sort of midway between the two so that it doesn't look too untidy. That's absolutely fine. So that worked nicely. Now in this corner here, there's an awful lot seems to be going on here, and if I zoom in and zoom in, surprisingly, when I tried to do this earlier, it came up with, it actually was looking at the position alignment here. So it was actually measuring between here and here, and I'm surprised it didn't do it this time, unless I've changed something. But let me just go back into my evaluation and just double click that again. No, I didn't change anything, so I'm a bit surprised it's not picked up on that. The reason being, in terms of position, sometimes it'll measure between that edge and that edge because the topology there is saying 0.5, and I know that's about 0.2 there. So it'll sometimes pick up on what it thinks is an error, but actually isn't. It's just that it's measuring between the wrong edges, and obviously we could, yeah, it'd be something we could ignore. This one I know about, this curvature, and it seems to be quite a long way out. It's 0.88 and 1, and if we were really determined we could fix that, but when we look at the highlights going through there, and it's difficult to see because I've got an untrimmed surface there, so I'll just rotate that and look at the back. Really, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with the highlights. There is a slight angle change there, and there's something microscopic in there, but it's over that little area there, and actually it's so tiny, I'm not going to worry about it. It's one of those areas where you could, in theory, get that to align, but you would have to split these surfaces up even more. I suspect you'd probably have to split this one, and so I'm going to ignore that one. That's the only edge I'm going to ignore. This one I can't ignore. This is dead easy to fix. It should be, hopefully. It's just that when we put the fillet in, sometimes the fillet function doesn't give you curvature everywhere, but it's usually not a big problem. It's one that you should be able to fix quite easily just by using a line, rather than spending too much time in the fillet function. If like 3 fillets out of 4 are curvature aligned and one isn't, then I would say just go into a line and try fixing it afterwards. So we'll first of all align this. Also, the ends of fillets, it's not always necessary to have it completely curvature matched end to end, because it's such a small, unless it's a very big fillet, you know, it's not necessary to do that. So if I curvature match that, not surprisingly, those gaps open up, but they are very tiny. We could try just increasing the degree along that fillet there, and then hopefully, so that's closed up that one, so that's now curvature matched, and we just need to get this aligned here. So let's hope this one goes in okay. Having said it's very easy. I've got history on there which I don't want, because I'm aligning on multiple edges, and so I need to delete that. Broken the curvature there, so let's just try G1 and change that to curvature. That won't actually, no, that won't give us curvature. So I said it was dead easy. I should never say that, should I? Because it never is. So let's just check that these are curvature aligned. They are. And probably the quickest thing to do here is just to detach that. We can just make that a bit smaller. So I've increased the degree as much as I can. So let's just detach that, rather than spending too much time trying to get it in one. Let's see if that will work. So I'll get rid of these locators because they're bound to get confused around here, and just evaluate those again. That one, that one, that one, that one. And then I've got to remember, if I'm aligning into this edge, that it's going to be a partial edge, because that was created as one big curve on surface there. So let's just hope that this works into there. Hooray. And yeah, great. So that's that. I can see that this one can be trimmed out. Oh, the highlighted curves on the surface are involved in trim operations which failed. It is recommended that you untrim the surfaces before proceeding. I'm going to untrim it then. It says it's untrimmed. So there's something not quite right there. There do seem to be, if I just isolate that surface, it looks like there should be 4 curves on surface. So let's just check there's 4 curves on surface. It does say there are, but it came up with a pink mark there. So makes me wonder whether that's there's something wrong there. So that pink there means that they're not joined up. So rather than guessing, it's probably best to recreate those. So let's just save what we've done. I mean, to be really safe, you can just delete all of the curves on surface. But I think I'm just going to delete those 2. I suspect that maybe this end doesn't join up or something, but although it looks as though it does, and it didn't come up with anything. But when I zoom in there, that line looks a bit thick. That usually shows that it doesn't quite join up. So you can see there's a bit of a gap there. And rather than guessing which curve on surface to use, it's better to fix that. Again, I'm a bit surprised that that didn't come up with the evaluate. So let's just go and delete all our locators and just run that evaluation again, because it should have picked up on that as a position mismatch. So I've got all of this, visible errors. According to this, it should pick up on anything that's less than 0.5 of a mil in terms of gap, and that's definitely less than 0.5 of a mil, I would say. I could try switching the tolerances on and off again, just to make sure that they wake up. And I'm just going to drag a window around here and see if that will come up with an error. Of course, it doesn't have curves on surface here, so it won't pick up on these edges at all. Although it might get confused if it finds this edge and that's within 5 mil. I'm not sure whether it will be. So it found it this time, but last time it didn't find it. So it's 0.03, and or maybe I just didn't spot it. So yeah, curves on surface. We can do the G2 on those edges, and then it's just up to us which way round we do this. Let's align that G2, that one to that one. Doesn't really matter. And then this one here is going to be, so we're going to just use normal here to align that to that surface. And I want position influence of 0, 1, so it keeps the CVs where they are as close as we can. And then I do want to, because I've changed this surface into that edge, I've got to check that one. I will also have to check this one, so I'll put that one on now while I think about it. And then we'll project that one onto there. Hooray, that all worked. So now trimming should work. Yes, good. Let's get rid of that mesh. Yeah, there's some other position ones around here as well. There's an angle one there, but that is because there is a sharp edge there which gradually increases as it goes from 0 around here. So it's picked up on something there. We seem to have got a lot of diagnostics that I didn't get before, and I don't quite understand why. Maybe they've just reappeared when I did a display haul or something. That was one that I spotted the other day, which is not quite right. I've just sort of forgotten about that one, so we ought to have a look at that one. Because whereas that little tiny corner there is absolutely microscopic, this is actually a bit bigger, and we really ought to fix that. And I think you will see that in highlights because it's quite a big area. So let's see if we can fix that one. And so that's G2. That's going to be an edge, and I'm just going to align it into the existing edge there. Now it's breaking the breaking position by a very small amount, angle by a small amount, and let's see if we do something like, so I've got skew on. I could try changing that to edge, but that's unlikely to work because that's now making that edge curvature aligned into here, which actually is making it a lot worse. The other possibility is if we put vector on and then we try view, for example, sometimes that might work. And if failing all of that, let's just revert that and see. I mean, that we've gone to the degree 7 there, so we don't want to go any higher than that. That one, this could be another one where we split it across here. That would be a possibility. The other possibility, of course, is to manually move it because it's 0.3 and it's at a very, very local point there. So let's, but sometimes those are really difficult to get rid of. If it's like a little bubble of curvature mismatch, then it's easy to get rid of. That's actually, it can be quite difficult to get rid of. What I wanted to see is what the whole display looks like there. So if I change this, I overwrite this and just say 0, so it'll now show us more of the overall effect there. And yeah, unfortunately, there's no threshold like there is with deviation, because it'd be nice to see where this is actually below 0.1, because we're not interested in this bit as such, but it might help just to understand what each CV is doing when we move them around. Let's put loads of mass sensitivity on, and I'm just going to see if I pull that point around, whether that might actually help. It's actually helped, and I suspect, but it's helped the curvature, but the gap is obviously, we are at risk of breaking the gap. Is there a point where we can get the curvature within tolerance? No, the curvature is still 0.3, but of course, as soon as the gap goes, then it no longer reports on the curvature at that point. Let's just try that one. Again, that's 0.3. It was unlikely, really, that was going to help. Let's try that point. That's helping bring the curvature down, but I suspect that that's going to break any minute now. Obviously, that's tangency into that lower edge, but that's what that's going to affect. Same, this one is going to affect tangency into this edge as well as curvature, but it's worth just exploring what these different points do. The one that affects curvature on this edge is actually this hull. That it's those CVs, and those CVs. But it's worth just having a look and seeing what all of them do. This one's obviously going to affect tangency this way, so that's what could break, which it does. And then this one's going to affect curvature down here, so that might break the curvature. So we don't seem to be making too much headway here. That's broken the curvature. It's possible, let me just save this because I'm now going to do, if you're just moving one point, you can get away with not saving it immediately, but now I'm going to move multiple points possibly. Let's see if I get the curvature down there, but it breaks the curvature here. Then I could maybe see what happens if I bring that back, mess around with these other points to try and bring the curvature back on the bottom edge, but of course we break angle, so it's probably too complicated. So I'm going to go back to what we had, hence why I just saved it for that minute. The other possibility here is that the other thing that will affect the curvature is not just the move, because I've been moving those normal to the surface, but the other possibility is if we slide those points. So I could slide them along that way, which shouldn't, but that won't really affect the curvature that way. But if I slide it this way, it shouldn't affect the curvature that way. I mean, it might do, but it should affect the curvature that way much more. That's probably too slow, so I need to increase the mouse sensitivity. So I don't know whether that's going to have enough of an impact there. No, so you get to a point where, I mean, this is too squashed up anyway now, and also you can see it does break it. It's not guaranteed that it's not going to break it, and I wonder what happens if I was to align that. So I'm going to do this with vector on in the Y direction, and just see what happens there when I do that. Obviously it breaks it, and then we'll try, because this is a big surface here, we could actually detach that, and hopefully that won't be, what you don't want to do is detach and make a tiny little surface just to get this to align, because you'll then end up with horrible highlights through there. So you want to make it reasonably big. I'd probably make it, you know, similar size to that maybe, and see what happens there. Let's get rid of this locator and this one, because those are now out of date. Now we split it up, and then we'll see if we can align that way. We haven't got a high degree on here, so that's another, you know, that's something that we can play with now. So if I align that lower one into the top one, it's not going to align at the minute because we've only got degree 3, but we can increase that right up to degree 7 or degree 5. That worked. So that's fantastic, but just because it's aligned in curvature doesn't mean it's going to be good. You can align things in curvature and then just find there's a horrible wobble through the surface. And so with that display there, which shows us the sort of overall continuity, that actually looks like it's absolutely fine. So that's good. Happy with that. That's quite common to find that you can't just do it on one side. You have to detach, you have to split the other side as well. But like I say, don't make the surfaces too small. There's so much stuff in there going on. I don't know what all of that is or whether it's relevant, but I don't think it is. So let's just save that again. And what I'd like to do is just get around and fillet all of that now. Finish those off. Hopefully these will be, I shouldn't say it, should I? Should be straightforward. Right, now when I'm creating my surfaces, as I've mentioned before, if you put create metadata on, it should be able to pick up on the parameters of a surface. So this surface here, for example, if I pick that and then go back into the fillet function, it should say found surface fillet metadata on picked object, load stored options. So if I say yes, it should pick up on the values that we used for that, which is great. So it's not history as such, but it just means that we pick up on how that fillet was built, or the surface. So on this one, I want edge align on both ends. I can put automatic on because I want to trim both sides back, and we've got continuity check. So this is one where we've got 3 edges perfectly curvature aligned. We've got one that isn't, and because there's only 1 out of 4, then I'm going to guess that we can align that. And bear in mind that that's degree 5, so we've got the opportunity to increase that to degree 7 if we needed to. On this end, of course, it doesn't know anything about that other fillet, so we wouldn't need to check that, that's okay. Oh, that's a surprise. Again, that the check mod didn't find that one, and or maybe I just missed it in the process. And so I'm going to align this, and I've got position influence for 0 on as usual, and this is one where if we increase that to 7, hopefully it goes in, which it does. You can play around with position influence, that sometimes works, or you can untrim this and put a new curve on surface on. But so this one's got history on it, and when I align it, I've not even increased the degree and it's gone in. So let's evaluate that end there. There's a slight curvature mismatch there, and if we go, I think I'll put history on the align there. might be worth putting that on. You can't always predict. History is like guessing what the future holds, which you can't do. So you know inevitably get that wrong. I thought maybe increasing the degree there might fix that just by magic, but it didn't. So I'm going to try and align that. That breaks the curvature, but again, we can increase the degree. So I've only gone up to 6 and it's now aligned there, which is good. And then we can carry on with this one. Now going around here, yeah, we've got this tiny little corner bit here, which I never trimmed out, but I don't really need to. I don't think there's a curve on surface there, no. The only reason for trimming that out would be just it obviously makes it easier to see, and you might decide to do that, but it's not necessary. But I'm going to do it just so we can see what's going on around there. It just makes it a bit clearer which fillet, how the fillets run across there. Now I could do, what you could do, or what you might think would be a good idea to save time, and it would be fine if you were just doing a fairly rough model, where we've got multiple surfaces here. So we could try this, where we go fillet, and I'm just going to pick all those surfaces there, and then just put the fillet in. And sometimes that will work nicely, but you can see this doesn't look very good around that corner. You can get some, I mean, sometimes it will work, but going around corners, it doesn't tend to be brilliant. So if I undo all of that, this is where history is good, because if I happen to come out of there, I can just query edit that. So rather than trying to delete all of those bits and thinking I need to recreate that now, I'm going to have to untrim everything. Just go and pick it as an object. So if you put history on, you can do this. Oh, sorry, query edit. You query edit one of those fillets, it picks up the whole thing, and then you can just say undo all, and saves you all that deleting and untrimming. But here I would be inclined to go and do each bit individually. So you do that bit into here. Now what's going to catch me out is this edge align, and so to avoid that, if you just put default on, because you can never tell which is going to be the start and the end one. So now I can see the start one is there, so I want to make that edge default, edge align rather. This one we don't want like this. We actually want it to flow into this edge, and it comes off at an angle there. There isn't an option there to do that. Extend, if you put extend on, it's going to go all the way to the far end, which again you don't really want. Not with automatic on. You could do that with take the curve on surface off. That'd be a possibility. Or you can say, or if I take extend off and just go back to the default. So we've got two surfaces there. Sometimes you find that it's better, well, often you find it's better to do it here, and just extend it outside the function. So I need to extend that because I'm going to trim convert that in a minute. So I haven't got curves on surface on there. I deliberately took that off. And then on this one again, we can do that. So we'll do that same thing. If I remember, I take edge align off. If I don't remember, then it takes a lot longer to run. So I've got trim type off, so no curves on surface, and I'll extend that out that way. So in this corner, we've got this fillet here, and we need to go around this corner somehow. So what I'm going to do, this is a trimmed surface, and I want to keep that as a trimmed surface in the final model because it's trimmed back to that construction surface at the lower edge. So if anything changes, like these angles have to change for some reason, then having that as a big surface is a good thing, because we can then trim it back. If we trim convert it, it's sort of, you then have to extend it and then trim it, and it's just a little bit more work really. So on this one though, I want to build another surface which is just going to be a construction surface, and because this is already trimmed, I can just go into surface edit, and I can do that in trim convert, take the 3D trimming off, and we've immediately got a trimmed version of that, except that I can't see explicit in there. It's weird. It's just coming up degree 1 by 1. Oh, delete active. No, I've lost it now because I forgot to put duplicate on. So this is yet another time when saving it regularly is great. So I'll just save that again, and then I'm going to have to go back to my recent one, which hopefully should have the fillet in from the corner. Yes, thank goodness. If not, I could just go back to the one at the start of the day if necessary, and then we'll see what layer we're in at the minute. So I'm just going to paste the old one into that layer, creation layer. Seems to take a long time, which is a bit weird. And then we want to delete this one. So I made multiple mistakes there when I did this, but what confused me is the fact that it wasn't coming up and showing me the explicit control. So let's go back into here, and maybe I just imagined it did, but quite possible. So what I want to do here is keep originals, and I want to put show surface deviation on just to see what happens there. So that worked this time, because last time it just went 1 degree 1 by 1. There isn't an explicit control. That was what I was expecting to happen, but it went degree 1 by 1 for some strange reason. You can see from these the deviations here that I've got edge deviations on. So on the edge there it's 0.004, on there it's 0, in the middle it's 0. So as long as this edge is pretty accurate, then 0.004 is nothing anyway, really, in terms of what we're trying to do here. So I'm using this surface, the trim converted surface. So this one here, that's going to be for construction only. The other one is just going to be in the final model. So I will trim that out eventually to that top edge, but like I've done before with corners, I end up with 2 surfaces, sometimes 2 surfaces going this way as well, and it's the trimmed version that I want. So I can make that into a template, the trimmed version, and I'm going to work with this. Keeps on moving around. I think it's because I can't see where the center of interest marker is. So, and so what I need to do here is I want to use this trim converted version to create so I can create a curve in here that goes from one edge to the other. So we can do this by extending that backwards. That'd be one option. So I'll just extend that down, and I'm going to extend it until we get to this point here. So that's the intersect. Now, if you're very lucky, then that might be very close, and it's actually not too far away. So I can just drag that down a bit until it's about in the right place, and then we can put a curve on there. So if I say duplicate that, and then I can align that curve. So the beauty of this is the CVs are pretty much in the correct places that we want. So we'll put G2 on here, and I'm going to put history on because I might want to mess around with the spacings possibly. You can see what happens because that's not quite the same as the underlying surface. It's had to flip it to a different place. So it's moved it slightly left to right. This point I can see is not quite on the end now. So I just need to make sure that I drag it to where that intersect is. No, it actually was on the right places because I haven't got this trimmed back. These points, I could just adjust them slightly so that they line up with the holes of this surface here. It won't make too much difference, but worth doing. And then this curve here, I'm going to align into here. I'm just going to make sure that that's actually on the intersect there. So when that becomes a cross and it snaps to it, that's exactly where it needs to be. And then this point needs to lie on that hull. So we got very close to the result there. Now we can delete this surface. We don't actually need that. Well, we don't need it. Yeah, we don't need that one. I'm going to bring back the template. So I'm going to untemplate that. And I'm going to now create it. So this curve there should lie on that surface very, very closely. So let's just check that. Usually I mean, I sometimes check it, but it's 0.006, so it's microscopically different, so that's perfect. And so I'm now going to trim this surface out to that point. So I'll go into trim. So this is a trim, not trim convert. So I'm projecting that normal, or it could be in the view. Doesn't really make much difference because it's 0.006 difference. So we've now got that surface there trimmed back, and because it's trimmed back to the right place, we can then make a copy of it for construction purposes again. Trim convert that there, and it says 0.002 on the edge, which is not quite intolerance, but probably close enough. I think what that means is that because we're going to use this for construction, so when we build our fillet going around that corner, when we align it to this the edge of the construction surface, it's not going to be quite in the right place. So we then need rematching or realigning to the trimmed surface. I'm just going to make that into a template again, so we don't have to look at it. So now we need to build something going around that corner. Unfortunately, it goes across this little surface in here, so we're going to end up with a little triangle, but that's fine. It's better to have an obvious triangle in there than a tiny little triangle. You know, ideally you want to get rid of that triangle altogether, but it's just impossible with the shape that we've got. So I'm going to pick up on that edge there. I'm going to copy that edge as a curve. So we copy that, and yeah, that original curve I could use that, probably be accurate enough, but it'd be probably better to go from that edge there. I mean, it doesn't actually make any difference for what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about really. So let's move that onto here. So if I look at that from the top view, what I'm trying to do here is use that same curve to make a shape out here. Now we've got to think about where these surfaces here, these fillets here, I'm going to do a trim convert, and let me just to clarify what I'm doing here. So we use the markup. So we've got to create a cut that goes across there. Ideally comes in at 90 degrees like we've done before. This one again coming in close to 90 degrees, doesn't have to be exactly that, but that's where this corner curve, which I'm drawing very badly, needs to go around there. So we end up with a four-sided space in there, which we'll put one surface in to start with, and then we'll probably have to split it up in order to get it to align. And like I say, there's a little triangle we're going to end up with there. Maybe it won't be that small, but the trouble is when you end up with very small surfaces, they're difficult to see, and it's easy to then make a mistake in the future and leave that out and then wonder whether there's a hole there, sort of thing. But probably easy to fill. So I've got to think about where this is going to come, and so let's go back into that top view. So I'm going to first of all slide this point down here a little bit. So I'm thinking of that going across there and forming not a 90-degree corner. It probably won't be at all, but something that's not too extreme. It doesn't want to be up here. It doesn't want to be down here. It's got to be somewhere in between. And then we could scale that. So I'm just scaling in all directions until that point roughly gets into there. And then we can use a line with history on. So we've got G2 there, that one into there. And that means we can then slide those up and down, of course. And that one into there. And then we'll query edit that one. And I'm just going to move that along a bit because I think that's too extreme there. So I'm thinking of that going across there. I'm trying to imagine that, and I'm going to take that back to more or less the shape it was. So this is obviously got to relate to these shapes in here. So it sort of needs to look a bit like it's got to be roughly an offset to that edge there, but you don't want to do an actual offset. You just can do it by eye. And I'm trying to keep the CVs. We've got to think also how these this edge is going to connect to this one when we put a surface in there, that the CVs are going to go from here to here and from here to here, etc. Right, so now let's put a plane in, and if we're really cunning, we can keep the history on the plane. So I'm going to put 3 points in, so I'm going to pick that point, and then this one, if I use Control Alt and slide down here, we keep the history, so you can see by the color it's got history on there. So if I did want to move that end of that curve down there, then the plane will actually change, which is nice. And then we'll slide that one down there as well. So let's go into top. And then we can go, we can put the intersects on here. So surface edit, intersect, on the first surface with history on. So I'm going to put an intersect between that and that plane, so we can see where our line's going to end up, and then that one and that plane. So if you feel that that's in the wrong place, if I query edit that blend, now I can move that along, and the section updates, the plane updates. You can see the plane rotates and the section updates. So you can then adjust that if you feel that that needs to go that way or the other way, or whatever you want to do. Like I say, it doesn't have to be 90 degrees. It's just as important that we get a nice condition, a nice offset to that edge there. So that's probably squishing it in a bit. This one, we can go to that end. We could also adjust that end as well if we wanted to. And so now we've got those, we've already got, wherever it's gone, we've already got those intersects in there, and we can do a trim convert on these fillets here. So I'm going to do a trim convert. I'm actually going to save this again. It's sort of, yeah, I mean, the history shouldn't be a problem on those planes, but if you're in any doubt, just delete the history on everything before you do go on to do the next stage. But here we don't want originals on. Not really interested in the surface deviation here. We're just going to trim those back, trim convert those back, that one there. So we've now got a bit of a hole going on in here between the curve there and these two edges. Because we've done a trim convert, it's always an approximation. So what we've got to do is make sure that we are that we're still accurately curvature aligned. And sometimes you find that that's not the case because it is an approximation. So I just want to make sure of that. I don't actually have curves on surface there, so let me just go into there, and don't have curves. Yes, because I built those fillets without curve on surface, and so we might as well just go straight into object, edit, and align, and project those on. So align that. It's going to be normal, or Z would do the trick, but normal because it should be very close. Position influence to 0, so the CVs don't get moved all over the place. And then we can do that on that one and that one. So I'm just doing the edges. I'm not worrying about that one at the minute. I think it's just, there's no ideal sequence, but I tend to go around doing all of the edges. We will have a fillet in there, of course. We've got nothing to compare it with at the minute. And then there's this end. We want to just check that one. Yeah, so only got degree 5 there, so hopefully we can just increase that to degree 7 and get that curvature aligned. Got to make sure that's edge, otherwise we end up curves on surface where we don't want them. And I want history off now because I'm aligning on multiple edges here, and it inevitably breaks things. So let's hope. Okay, doesn't want to play ball, so that's okay. Let's just check the block surfaces while we're here. Now that probably is an indication that it needs to be detached. So I think I'm just going to go straight to it and detach it. On fillets, it doesn't really matter if we split it up too much. obviously, again, you don't want hundreds and hundreds of, you don't want to divide it up and divide it up. It all depends on how much time you have really to do these things. So that's, now there is, yeah, of course I've created curve on surface, didn't I? So it's all the way along there. So let's go into a line, back to project, normal, that one into there, that one. And we get this error in terms of position. It's measuring between there and there, which of course is nonsense. So we can delete that. So it says 30 mil. We know that's rubbish. That's not measuring the right thing. And we know that what that one has got an error on it. So we've got to align that as well. So let's do that one first. That one, G2, must remember to put edge on. And in fact, I should also put position influence of 1 on always into ends like that. It's switching between all of these things is really keeps you on your toes. I mean, if I'd made that 1, you probably wouldn't. Well, you see, it does make a difference. So sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you don't. So I made that 0 and that's absolutely fine then. So this is all actually, we've now got curves on surface all the way along here. So we might as well trim that out so we can see what's going on. And around the top edge we haven't, because we haven't actually built anything yet. So you've got to go around and check everything. This surface here, it is a construction surface, and we ought to make sure that this is aligned into here. Otherwise we're going to end up with a corner that doesn't quite align. And but often there's a little bit of adjustment to be made when you bring it back in the trimmed surface. But so I'm going to align that there. Is where it says skew, that should say edge, because that needs to flow, and it shouldn't really be changing this very much. That lower edge doesn't really matter. I'm just putting on edge there. Of course, when we do this, we are changing this slightly from the trimmed version. So that's where you can find that when you bring it all back, this edge may not quite align with the trimmed version, but hopefully it'll be close enough. And then I'll just assume that one's a problem. Now that one, I've not trimmed this out yet, so actually I want to revert that. And so we need to trim this side first. This has got a curve on surface there, so we can just go ahead and do that. And then we can align that one into here, like so. Again, I've got position influence of 0, 1, so that the CVs don't move up and down. And this top edge needs to be edge rather than skew. And then, so everything's aligned. We've got everything around here, that one, that one, that one, that one, all of that. So what we should now be able to do is put a surface in there. So I'm going to save this again. And I know this goes over multiple surfaces, but whenever I do a corner like this, those surfaces are so close to each other, there's no point in doing splitting that up first. We want to put in the biggest surface we can to start with, and then detach it later, or split it up in some other way. So in these corners, we want to use square. So if I start from the top one there, we want G01, so it holds that shape. And then on these ends, we want curvature. So curvature, curvature, curvature. And then we also want to make sure our boundaries are linear into these other surfaces. So now I need to pick that in the correct order. So the top one's going to be positioned. It doesn't matter, you know, if you do this in a different order. It's just that that's easy to remember. If you start off with the curve and then do the surfaces, it's easy to remember which way around it was. If you're lucky, everything will line up. Pretty rare that happens. Now, although that's not aligned, don't worry about it, because the first thing to do then is to make this a nice clean surface. So I would then go into these two, just pick those, isolate those. I'm going to take these green lines off. That's just that old model I had in there. So first of all, I want to align this way. So let's go into align, but don't want history on because I'm doing multiple aligns here. I will be. So I'm going to align that into here. And I'm going to put position influence of 1 on, which might make a difference. again, it doesn't matter if it doesn't align 100%. The main thing really is the G1, and the fact that it says it's got to curvature yellow means that it is G1 continuous. You can see that there. So that's fine, because what I'm after is putting in some planes here. So if you're going to tidy this up, which is worth doing, you can either move the CVs, manually, slide them along and make sure that those are straight lines, or if you want to do it with planes, once you do it a few times, and I've shown you this before, where we pick 3 points, create a plane, pick 3 points. So I'm picking up on the tangent condition into here, and then we'll rotate that around. So I'm picking up on that tangent condition, and then the end point there. And I'm using the space bar just to move on to the next one. It's just quicker that way. And then we put the grid in there so that we can see what's going on. So I've got that plane there, and you can see that those points all lie on a straight line, apart from these two in the middle. So we can just go into surface edit, planarize in that view. And then I need to go, I've now put set CP and toggle CP on to my marking menu, which is a good idea to do. Pick that one, go into the left view. Got to remember to go into the left view, otherwise this won't work. And then you just go and straighten those up, pick that CP. Once you've done this a few hundred times, you find it's quite straightforward, believe it or not. It takes quite a bit to get this sequence going, obviously, but as I say, you don't have to do this. You could just do it manually. It depends. This just should give you a perfect result eventually in terms of the spacing of the CVs, at least. So we've got all of that. That's all neat and tidy. And so now we can we could try and align this a bit more. I mean, there's a gap there, which isn't, obviously, that's something that we don't want at all. But the chances of getting this all to align probably in this corner is pretty low. So I've got curvature there, position influence of 1 into that edge there. Just try this one. So it's broken the tangency there, and we've got curvature of 0.17. So because we tidied up those CVs, I mean, hopefully they will move around a little bit, but it'll be microscopic now. But what that now means is that we can now look at increasing the degree and seeing whether we can get this to align this way. Now this one isn't aligning, but it's 0.17. We're going to have to detach this to align it into these top surfaces. So when we do that, this will stand a better chance of aligning. So if we can get it close to 0.1, then that's good enough. Let's try this one, this edge into here. Like I say, there will be a change as well when we try and align this to the trimmed version. So we shouldn't worry too much about this. This one's pulling it away there. So let's just put G1 on there. And so the curvature's 0.26, 0.12. I'm going to just leave that like that. There's no point in fussing too much about it. As long as it's reasonably close, it should be okay once we start to detach it. So we're going to keep this construction surface going in here, although we know it's not 100% accurate. And then we're just going to concentrate on detaching this. So let's go into the top view. No, so the top view, I've gone into top view and thought, that doesn't look like the top view. And of course, it's because I'm in one of these planes. So I've now got to toggle out of that into the world space. You can see how much quicker it is going down here than actually having to go into these palette menus to do this. So I want to put a point there, and I want to put a point there, those intersect. So we go into construction, point, and we just drag along here. I should actually get rid of that curve because it's actually in the way. And it's got rid of the point as well, which is fine because I had that picked. So really it should be the edge I'm picking anyway. So you can see how small this triangle is going to be when we've done all of it. And then we want to detach this. Before I do that, I'm going to, because this is a critical point. I mean, what I sometimes do is actually make a copy of that and just stick it in a construction construction layer, because obviously in the future, if you know, in an hour's time when you try to detach this and something's not quite right, or you need to change the edges, you think, oh, if only I had that original surface, and then you try and find it in all your old files. It can be a nightmare trying to find it, whereas if you put it in a construction layer, you know, it might save you some time. So it's worth doing. I'm hoping it's not going to go terribly wrong anyway, but so let's go and detach this. I'm picking up on those points using control like that, and then I'm going to delete those locators, because I know they're all going to go wrong when I try and, because I've now detached it in 3 spots, it's going to definitely pick up on the wrong things. I'll take those CVs off. They're a bit difficult to see there. And the planes are another thing that you could, you know, you might need again if you had to go back to scratch. And you could, I'm going to just delete them, but you could put them in a construction layer. That would be a sensible thing to do. So now I'm going to have to go around and put the G2 markers on. So we know that there's some issues here. Internally, you'll find they're always correct, because detach, that's how it does it. You're trim converting along ISO palms essentially. So we haven't got anything, we've not aligned this to anything at the top here, so we should do that next rather than trying to fix these, because that will could alter things quite a bit. So I'm going to go G2 project, and this is going to be in the Z, that one to the main block there. Yeah, so it's broken. The message is coming up there to do with this edge, not that edge, of course. And so we've got curvature there into that little triangle bit, that one into this main block. So we've now got those all trimmed, and if you want to, we could actually trim this back, I think. Yeah, so we're getting green spots there all the way along there, and then this one here. So we can at least see what we're dealing with. And then we're going to just try and align all of this up now. So I'm going to go into this bottom edge, bearing in mind this is an edge and not project. So I'm going to align that to here. Now this is going to be a partial edge. And on this edge here, because this has all been built from a single surface, which we've then detached, we should have position influence of 1 on, so that the CVs will be exactly the same as this surface. And that's gone in perfectly, which is fabulous. And then we'll try that one as well. That should be the same thing. That one's still got a position mismatch, but quite small. That edge should be on, which it is. And then we've got curvature alignment there, but not here. So let's just see if we can align this one. So this is going to be another edge here. It's not going to be a partial edge, and it's going to be a position influence of 1 there. So let's fix that. Well, sorry, that was actually on already. Now that's broken that, but 0.13, so not very much. If we go back to G1, that's not going to help us, because the problem was G2, so we have to put G2 in there. We could try just putting skew on, see whether that helps. Doesn't. So it looks like we're going to have to redo that one. I think that one there, I would untrim that and just delete that curve on surface. We're very close, but if you do it that way, rather than trying to align it into that edge again, I'm going to do this in and project it onto there. Like I say, this often gives you a better result, or not. Now, because that was dangerously close to being G2, if we go back to G1, well, we've still got a problem there, and then go G2, no. Okay, so we have to put G2 on there, and we're getting quite a big, it's a big number, 0.65, but we've got a lot of CVs to play with here, so I'm inclined to, rather than trying to split this up, I'm just going to put loads of mouse sensitivity on, just see whether we can get rid of that. See how that comes down so quickly now. In fact, I'm going to have to increase that mouse sensitivity to something crazy like 5,000, and it's gone. So although it's a big spike, because we've got lots of CVs around the area, had a feeling that it might go in easily. This one's a position mismatch, so rather than trying to hit it with a sledgehammer, let's just see if we can just get the position aligned. I've got project on, I've got Z on. No wonder it doesn't align. That's completely the wrong setting. So I need to go back to edge with position influence of 1 on. That's what I must have there. And then we can just check G2, and it does it. And it's because it was only out in position. Now the problem, well, I say it's a problem. It's not necessarily going to be a problem because we've always got a possibility here of, you know, that all aligns. Everything's aligned there, but the only slight technical thing is that surface was a trim converted surface, which I said we were going to use for construction. We've actually got a template in there, which is that one, and so I'm going to first of all save this. So you could say that's good enough, and it is really. And but if we want an absolute ideal, then we can go into the template, untemplate that, so that's the trimmed one. We'll delete that curve on that trim converted one, or you could template that instead if you wanted to. Probably a more sensible thing to do, but I'm just going to go like that. Now what we don't know is whether these actually align with these edges, because that trimmed version is different to the trim converted version. This is only a technical thing, really, is that if we ever wanted to untrim this and change that bottom edge with the construction surface, this would be technically a better solution. So let's just go and check this. There's every chance this won't be quite curvature aligned. Yeah, so there's some slight errors there in terms of position and so forth. Now on this one, if we try and align this, if we do G2, and it's going to be a partial, and we want, now we're aligning into a trimmed edge, and what you want to do there is to put position influence of 0 on, because we haven't actually got CVs or an edge with CVs on it. We've just got a curve on surface there, and so you're probably going to end up with this. So if we really wanted to get this technically right, then there's a little bit more work to do. You might even have to detach that a few times. I'm not going to bother. I'm actually going to go back to the one that I just saved, because I'm thinking that's a waste of time. I'm just going to go with that trim converted one, because you can always, you can always extend that down and trim it to a different construction surface if you needed to. But we've got a solution here. It's absolutely fine, and we should find that the highlights around that corner should be pretty good, which they are. So I'm going to go with that. That's no problem. This is just a tiny technical difference between that and the absolute ideal solution. So we've got a fillet missing here, and hopefully that fillet and that fillet are the same size. Otherwise we've got a problem. So I'm going to go and pick that fillet there, go into the surfaces, picking up on the metadata, and I'm going to fill it between there and there, just checking my defaults are on, so it doesn't give me it takes forever to come up with the answer. So I've gone to edge align there. This one has to be edge default. I'm going to put automatic on. It won't do this side, but it will do this side, and that works fine. I've got create history on in case I needed to change anything, and but all that was curvature matched. So we're going to go into evaluate, look at the curvature on there. That's great. That aligns. This one's probably not. Oh, okay, good. That was a miracle. Okay, so there's one round there that I didn't notice before. Maybe that was in the surface checker. This one should now trim out. I think if I do trim, do we come up green dots everywhere? We do. It does. It's done that. So let's just get this one to align. Immediately I can see that's quite a long shape, so let's just make it degree 7. Why the CVs went off. And we're just going to align that straight into that edge, and hopefully that will do the trick. But into an edge, it's because it's a trimmed edge, we always want position influence of 0, 1. which has done that, which is great because that's all aligned. So I think all of that's now there. So let's just go take all of the display off. I'm going to delete all of the locators, and if we take all of the edges off, so hitting F12, just to make sure that there's nothing obvious that we've missed in terms of trimming all of that area. So that looks okay. And then I'm just going to save that because that's a good point to save for sure. And then what I'll do is, rather than getting all of that display of everything else, I'm just going to go and isolate this lot. Now notice there's some history in there, so while I'm at it, always a good idea to delete the history. Now we've got to that point, just check we've got everything, delete history, just to make sure that we don't have that on, and then we can do a check mod on that whole thing. So we've got tolerances are the same as we've specified before. So now if we do a check on there, oh, of course that's the one edge there, and there's also an error there. So the check mod is so useful because it just, you know, you think everything's fine, and then there's always something that you've missed. But if you build things and use the surface continuity checker as you're going, then the number of things that you have to fix is always very low. So these are just saying that those, I don't know why it does that, because that's all saying it's fine. On this one, this is not so fine. So one I want to look at there. I mean, as I've said before, I'm working this model to a level which is above what you'd need for a concept model. So you can see that in a concept model. There's nothing wrong with that at all in terms of the highlights. It's not really necessary to fix every single problem. You can just decide if the highlights look okay, then it is okay, and it looks like it's a tiny little error, but might as well get rid of it. So this is because we're aligning into a trimmed edge. We always want to position influence to 0 on, and hopefully this will go. And if it doesn't, so we've still got curvature alignment on all of these sides, so that one hasn't gone. One thing you can try is changing the position influence. It will move the CVs along a little bit, but it can sometimes or not fix the problem. And if it doesn't fix the problem, another quick fix might be just to increase the number of spans. So I'll take that back down to 0, increase the number of spans. So you can see it gets to 3, it's 4 spans. And if we look at the actual ISO palms there, those where our 4 spans are, that's absolutely fine. You know, it's a multi-span surface, but it's very ordered. If you know, you could do it in, I'm sure you could do that in 2 surfaces by detaching it, but this is another alternative that sometimes you can just increase the spans a bit. I mean, maybe if I put position of 1 on, and yeah, no, it doesn't want to know unless I put, it likes that 0 and 4 spans. You just have to try these different things, but even if that's a multi-span surface, it doesn't matter. The other, if you ended up, you know, at the 100 spans, you don't want that, absolutely. But if you've put, you know, 4 spans in there and you can see clearly where those spans are, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a fillet. So there's nothing wrong with a multi-span surface where it's a fillet. If you really want to reduce this, then of course there's all the other options like detaching it, or untrimming this, deleting the curved surface, and then realigning it with Projecton. All of those things will also work. So there's all sorts of options that you can you can use for getting things to align, and that one is just one that we know about. It looks horrendous, but it's over such a small area. When we looked at the highlights, it was absolutely fine. So